desire. You had to purposefully or with an intent to disregard. But now under this language, presumably a person could say, "Hi, ma'am," and they have a desire to be addressed as a sir, and they are now in violation. That seems like the wrong way to go if our desire is to have clear standards in law as to what actually triggers reaction from the state. What is that?
Rep. Luck, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will end on this. It's a Supreme Court decision. This was the question presented for the majority of the court. Like many states, Colorado has a law forbidding businesses from engaging in discrimination when they sell goods and services to the public. Laws along these lines have done much to secure the civil rights of all Americans. But in this particular case, Colorado does not seek just to ensure the sale of goods or services on equal terms. It seeks to use its law to compel an individual to create speech she does not believe. The question we face is whether that course violates the first free speech clause of the First Amendment. And then the holding. In this case, Colorado seeks to force an individual to speak in ways that align with its views, but defy her conscience about a matter of major significance. In the past, other states, in Barnett, Hurley, and Dale, have similarly tested the First Amendment's boundaries by seeking to compel speech they thought vital at the time. But as this court has long held the opportunity to think for ourselves—
Your time has expired.
Thank you. I ask for a no on the concurrence.
Representative Titone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Well, I just want to say on behalf of all the trans people out there who are watching and listening, the parents of trans kids and myself, vote yes to concur.
Further discussion. Rep. DeGraff, did you wish to speak? Representative Garcia.
Not today.
Rep. Garcia, you have 5 minutes and 19 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members, I just want to clarify some things that we continued hearing, which are just false and not in the bill. The bill does not in any way allow for up to 3 name changes without a court order. It is just a gender marker. It is not a name change. I want to just restate what our colleague from Douglas County corrected as well, is that there is, in fact, within the bill, under marriage certificates and marriage licenses, or civil union certificates, that it is outlined and dated on the certificate itself if it is reprinted with new names. So it does demonstrate that it had been changed and updated. I want to thank the representative from Fremont, from Teller County, from all the places that you're from, and because I will agree completely with you on the change from striking the misgendering and dead naming that we had in the bill. We believed that it was actually stronger in how it protected free speech in the way that we defined it, because it had those 4 tests that had to have passed in order for someone to have committed those that level of harassment. Thank you for bringing that up. Outside of that, I'm not going to speak to the bill yet, but I will say that the concurrent amendments, the Senate amendments that we are bringing to you today, they still do a lot of good for the community that needs them. They are still protections that are needed. And while it is a completely different bill, it is still a good bill. And I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1312. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Representatives DeGraff and Woodrow. Representative Woodrow is excused. Please close the machine. With 39 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 2 excused, the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1312 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move for the repassage of House Bill 1312 as amended.
Further discussion? Mr. Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So I'm going to talk to the bill as in relation to, I guess would be the concerns from my district. You all me know well enough now, I don't care what you all do, to be honest. Freedom's freedom until it plays with kids or messes with kids, okay? And in HD 47 in Greater Rural Colorado, I truly believe we don't get credit for it, but I think we're a testament to that because these towns are the melting pot of Colorado. Throughout all of our towns, I mean, one of everybody and everything. And that's what makes America great. But in House District 47 in the Greater Rural Colorado, we're very much a God, family, country area. And they all work symbiotically to us as we look at, we worship our God. We try to raise our family through godly values, and then we try to carry those values into our country and try to make it the best country we can. And I don't think we ask for a whole lot. Most of my constituents just want to put in an honest day's work. They want to worship God. They want to provide for their families. They want to enjoy the fellowship of friends. They want to contribute to their communities. But I think the most important thing I see from my constituents is they're invested in their kids' lives. They want to raise their kids. In rural Colorado, that's what our lives are centered around because that's all we have is our kids. Whether it's football games or basketball games, our community coalesces around our children. And one of the things I ran on and I said on every campaign speech that I ever give was parents know best for their children, not big government. And at the end of the day, I'll come up here and I fight fiercely for my district, but I think a lot of the stuff that happens to us out of this building we take in stride. We're not happy about it, but we're proud. And we put our heads down. And we keep working. We keep praying. And we work to change in a way that you all see that we're fighting for something too. And we may not agree with a lot of the stuff that comes out of this building, but guess what? We get up and we go to work. And we work to change it, whether it be the next election cycle at the state house or the governor, or even in city council. We get upset, don't get me wrong, but I think we take it in stride for the most part. I think that people fiercely trying to protect their kids is not a bad thing. We love our kids. And I think the fear that most of these people feel is And my colleague stated it best from Loveland is some days kids don't even know what they had for lunch, or kids are so up and down. My daughter's now, one day it's the new thing, the next day it's the next. And I think what makes it hard for some of these parents is your kids could go to school and start hanging around with a bunch of kids and come home with a different idea. And just because you want to sit down with your kid and you want to talk to him about this, because the way I understand this is if you don't just automatically agree with this, that it creates problems. And I think by letting us run the traps as parents, because it goes back to the God, family, country. When we run into a problem, we go to the book. And that was the book that a lot of us believe give us the directions on how to live life. So we run that trap. And then say we want our kid to be able to talk to a mental health professional to see if that's the next trap. Because if somebody's going to go through this process, or if there's going to be a big change to their life, I don't think there's anything wrong with making sure it is what it is. I think we do it in a lot of things that we do in life. So saying, okay, and hold on, let's breathe a little bit. Let's make sure that this just isn't something that was brought up at school or something that a group of people were doing. And at the end of the day, if that's who your kid is, that's who your kid is. But by saying, hold on, let's pump the brakes and let's make sure, as parents, I think that's one of the greatest things we can do. Because if you're going to, when I was a kid, my parents used to say, I've got your back 110%, but if you lie to me, number one, I can never trust you again, and number two, how do you expect me to have your back? So as parents, when you're raised with that and you want to take that onto your kids, by just asking them to hold on and run in a few of these traps, I think that that's what parents are supposed to do, and to be told, nope, if you don't do this, automatically 110%. And it could result in some pretty hard things for families. I don't know if you all have seen the movie Pure Country. There's a song in there, and they talk about singing a song about the heartland, a place you feel like home. That's my country. We still wave at our neighbors. We still see each other at church. That's part of the fabric of this state as well. And we're fine living side by side. And even though we don't agree with a lot of things, I don't think we show up on a warpath trying to create problems. But I'll tell you what, you mess with people's kids where I'm from, that's a whole different thing. Because that's their life. They don't just get up and throw their kids on a school bus. Those kids work on the farm and ranch with them. Parents and kids, you have to realize, and I was so far away from my neighbors, it was me, my mom, and my dad, and my brother, other than in school. Every day, get up, go to work together, come home, eat lunch together, eat dinner together. That's family, I think, for rural Colorado is a little bit different because, first of all, there's nothing for kids to do. And what there is to do, their parents usually put them to work. I'm going to be honest with you. But that family unit is so tight that if you come after their kids, they're going to be in an uproar. And we can talk about taking jobs in here. I think a lot of people shrug that off and try to find something else, even though it's hard. Guns are a whole nother story. My district, those people would go down in flames to stand up for their guns. There's no doubt about that. But when you mess with their kids, you've picked a whole new battle. Because they aren't going to comply. And they aren't going to take it. And I'd hate to be the person that shows up that tries to take their kids. I really do. Because I'd die for my kids. Somebody could call this chamber right now and say, we've got your kid, and the only way you're going to get your kid back is on that camera, slit your throat in front of 65 people, and you want to know what? You can bet your end. Ty's going to do it. I'd do anything for those kids. I've drugged myself to work sick, tired, went through financial crisis because they've been sick. I've invested a lot of years into those kids. I'm never going to give up on them, no matter what they do. But I'm going to run the traps as a parent. And nobody's going to stop me. No law, nobody in this chamber, nobody in law enforcement. And I respect all of you. I expect law enforcement. When it comes to my kids, all bets are off. What, sir?
1 minute.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you.
And when we come down to it, I think if we all got together in a room, I think most people would agree on that, both sides in here. If you've got kids, you understand. And not too long ago in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin was elected governor. And I remember watching the exit polls that night. I recommend you go back and watch that. Because it didn't matter if people were Republicans, Democrats, or independents. They made a statement that night. And it was stay away from our kids. I urge a no vote.
Further discussion, Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members, I just want to clear some things up between this discussion today, going all the way back to Judiciary Committee when I first heard this bill. And I said this in my closing remarks in Judiciary, and I'm going to repeat it here for this body in case you didn't hear it. We had a lot of testimony from transgender individuals, a lot of them young, teenagers, that came in and testified. And a lot of them accused myself and the members that were sitting on that committee of hating them, of hating the trans community. And what I said in my closing remarks is, I don't hate anybody. I don't hate any of you. That committee took a toll on me, I'm telling you right now. The amount of young teenage kids that came in there, and some of them cried, you know, the word suicide and depression and loneliness, the amount of times that came up and that they felt like they weren't understood by people, I'm telling you, members, that broke my heart to hear that as a father and as a human being. And I hope by now, over these last few months, that you've learned that I am generally just a nice person, an individual outside this well when I run into you in the hallways. I do not hate anybody. But as my colleague from Los Animas was getting at is, you know, as a parent, I have hills and I have lines that I draw. And with the original version of this bill and this current version that we have right now, that line has been crossed. Because you've taken your beliefs and you've put them into my area, with my kids, my home. And that's where I draw that line at. And that's why myself and many of my colleagues have been fighting this bill the way we have. It's not because we hate trans people. It's because we hate having our parental rights infringed upon. It's as simple as that. A piece that's still in this bill that was in the original version is Section 6, and it talks about name changes in schools. And I ran an amendment that said you have to have parental consent to change your name in school if you are a child. And that amendment was defeated. Now let me be clear to the members in here. In my family, names have a meaning. There's a tradition there. I named my children. Who are any of you to tell me that my child can go to school and change their name without my even knowledge? Who are any of you to say that? I gave them their names. I was there when they were born. I was there when they said their first words and took their first steps. I was there on their first day of school, and I will be there on their last day of school. And I will be there when they have children of their own, and they name their children. And God willing, my children will be by my side as I lay on my deathbed and take my last breaths on this earth. Not a single person in this room will be. Stop putting yourselves, the government, between us parents and our children. We are sick and tired of it. It's not about hating trans people. It's not about any of that. It's about putting yourselves in between us and our kids. We are sick and tired of it. And that's why we have fought this bill. I want you to think about that. We received thousands of emails, thousands of phone calls. Not because thousands of people around Colorado hate trans people. It's because they're sick of the bills we're passing infringing on their rights. And this perhaps may be the most egregious we've seen so far. That's why we feel this way. It is not about hate. It is about love. The love I have for my kids.
Further discussion? Rep. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Yeah, all of the above. I think what the representative from Loveland was trying to say, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, it took me 8 years to get pregnant, and then I lost a baby. I don't think I knew what love was until I held my first child. I had animals, I had nieces, I had nephews, but I don't know that I truly understood a deep love that I get, somebody I would die for. I mean, my husband, I thought about maybe stabbing him in the middle of the night. No, I'm just kidding. Jay, I love you. I was just kidding. That was a joke. I was just kidding. Just when I was nursing and he was soundly sleeping. Anyway, the love of a parent to their child, wow, I can't. And for people that can't have a baby, I grieve with you because it took me 8 years. I have never felt a love like that. It is beyond the ability to even speak of. And so when you say things like it's not a big deal when they just change their name behind your back, boy, that just ruffles feathers. And you need to hear us, and you need to hear us say that, because that is what is so frustrating when you say things like, you're not gonna go to jail, things like that. I've already beaten that like a dead horse. I'm not gonna go after that again. But chosen name, this new language in CATA, the rep, one of the sponsors and I talked off record, offensive language. So long as the name does not contain offensive language, the individual is not requesting the name for frivolous purposes. The business community, there's no guardrails, there's no safeguards, there's nothing. There's nothing like the previous bill. I mean, we are adding so much more into CATA. Let that be clear. The new language is chosen name means a million different things, and then to not even safeguard that, as long as the name does not contain offensive language and the individual is not requesting the name for frivolous purposes. For who? You guys voted a bill down of mine that said inappropriate, and I changed it. I changed inappropriate to make it so clear, and it still wasn't good enough. But we're gonna accept offensive language and frivolous purposes. I can't keep up. My head is spinning. I just can't keep up. The business community, this will kill them because there's no safeguards in this. And then you add a legislative declaration that says these protected classes and ensures that every Coloradan is able to enjoy freedom from discrimination. Freedom of choice for Coloradans, except for Christian conservatives like Jack Phillips and Lori Smith. They didn't have any. Without unnecessary governmental interference. Really? Tell that to the parents who are losing their children. Tell that to the parents whose kids can go to school and change their names. The unnecessary governmental interference? It's all through this bill. And you wonder why we're upset. And you wonder why we come down to the well. It's all over this bill. Unnecessary governmental interference. Freedom of choice for Coloradans. No, it's not. It's not a free state for all. Let's be very clear. Birth Certificate Modernization Act, you just have to be a legal representative. So when the courts take away your children and they establish a guardian ad litem because you question non-systematic reviews and non-FDA approved meds and lifelong sterility and mutilation, when you question that, and the courts who have taken kids away from their parents right now without this bill get a legal representative to sign a birth certificate change away from the parents, unnecessary governmental interference. It's all over this bill. And if you're divorced parents, who gets to sign that if your child wants to change their birth certificate? The bill sponsors help me understand the driver's license, so I'm not going to belabor that. Individuals not lawfully present, that sets up a whole, CBI can't even get a lot of things right. We've got gun bills coming through. We got 8 hoops we're going to have to jump through. Background checks for guns are going to be waitlisted probably a year. And now we've got felons who can change their names as of last year, and now they're going to be able to change their sex. If you don't think that's a public safety crisis, you're fooling yourselves. We are the 3rd least safe state, the 8th most violent, the 4th highest for rape, 10th highest for trafficking. This is a loophole. And to think that we are going to have anyone check background checks, what, guns? All those gun laws? Now you can change your sex? You can change your name too if you're a felon. Now you can change your sex. Let the loopholes fly, baby. And a safety clause. I know that you guys joke about that. It's not funny to our caucus. The people don't have a voice up here when their representatives get Rule 14 and 16, and they get a slap in the face when you throw a safety clause on a bill like this. On a bill like this, when the people can't even petition and say, wait a second, when you only go to activist groups that will prefer this bill and you leave out the parental groups and the parents in the district who have had enough, and then you slap them in the face with a safety clause. And we want to talk about feeling safe and protected spaces, not for all of us, not in this state. There's plenty of us that don't feel safe in protected spaces. There's plenty of us. Some came forward this year that don't feel protected in their safe spaces. It's not about hate for a community. It's not about denying anyone humanity. Jesus tells us to love our neighbor, but he also tells us to speak truth and bring light. Let's not forget about the whole Bible. When you pick and choose little pieces, there's a big part that talks about shedding light and truth. This is not about hate. It's about serving and securing the rights of parents and their love for their children. You can't go after a community. We have an equal protection clause, so I don't even know why this bill is necessary, but apparently it's necessary. In your quest to protect some, you are failing miserably at protecting the rights of parents. Children are not the rights of the state. They're not the rights of the government. We keep saying it time and time again from this very well. There's got to be a bridge somewhere. But because your quest to protect some, you try to usurp our rights as parents. And then you tell our children to keep secrets from us. The one thing that parents tell our children not to do to keep them safe. We tell them, don't keep secrets from us. It's not safe. And you take a small community of people whose parents might be abusive, and you make all of us pay for that. You're missing the point. You're missing the point when you come up here. It's kind of like legal immigrants versus illegal immigrants. We loop them all into one. We're not talking about hate for a community. There's no hate for a community. We're talking about taking away the rights of parents. And so I think you're missing the point. But I promise you, we will make sure the point is loud and clear, and we will take it outside this building like we've done for the last month and a half. Parents from all walks of life are united. As my good friend says, we are accidental activists, and the line in the sand has been drawn, and we're just about to get loud. Thank you.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. When I spoke before, I was speaking to the concurrence. I wish we had non-concurred because it's a different bill, and as I said, it's still a very bad bill. Some of what I will say up here is repetitive, but hopefully the truth repeated often enough will actually sink in. I represent House District 56. It's a mostly rural area. It encompasses largely rural areas of 7 counties. About 11,000 square miles, about 8 people per square mile. we're not that much different than the other districts on the Eastern Plains. My daughter grew up at home alone with us, had some time to socialize on the bus for about an hour each way on the way back to and from school if we didn't pick her up. And then she was back with us. And it was good. Until she could drive, we always knew where she was. We were really too far away for her to ride a bike anywhere either. But the 7-county area that I represent is populated by very good people. People who love their neighbors, love their families, and they don't judge their neighbors. They generally accept their neighbors. Sometimes they're irritated with their neighbors, and they'll always lean in and help their neighbors. But they love their communities, but they love their families more. They look at what happens in this building generally, and they just shake their head. Because generally it doesn't impact them more than the million things that are facing them every single day. You know, they've got fences to fix, they've got animals to tend to, they've got hay to put up. They've got chores that keep them busy. But all that does stop when we interfere with their kids. When I ran for office, what I heard most was just, in answer to the question I would usually ask is, what can I do for you when I'm in Denver? Or what can I help the government stop doing to you when I'm in Denver? And rarely, if any, did I ever get an answer to what we could do. It was always about what we shouldn't. It was, stay out of my pocketbook. Stay away out of my business. Stay away from my family. Stay away from my kids. And this bill, though it's changed, it's been amended, is still a very bad bill because it still has mechanisms that it puts the government between parents and their kids. And several of us have spoken to that already, but I hope you're listening, because this is real. No matter what you're trying to impact, you're impacting real people and their families and their relationships with their kids. This bill allows important information to be kept from parents, critical information, information that really indicates that there needs to be some engagement that may not happen. Previous representative spoke of this, and I will again. When my daughter was younger, my wife and I did have a chat with her. We talked to her when she got older and she was going to be spending time not just going to school on the bus, spending time at school and getting on the bus and coming home from school to us, but starting to participate in after-school activities, going over to friends' houses. And we told her, if somebody ever tells you we're going to do this thing, but don't tell your parents, that the first thing you need to do is tell your parents, that is the signal that somebody means to do you harm. And that's what this bill does. Even as it is amended, it still does. It sets up this mechanism where a child can take an action with the support of other adults, and that information is going to be kept from parents. It is wrong. Please vote no. If there are issues that need to be resolved, there's got to be another way. There should be another way, and it's not something that we're ever going to get to in the 27 hours or so that we have left in this session. But there's always another session. There's always another 700 bills. Let's maybe come together with some of those folks that weren't engaged during robust stakeholdering, and maybe we can figure this out. I would encourage that, but vote no.
Representative Hartsook.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's well past 9 o'clock, and we continue to debate, comment on a bill here. Starting out with 1312 in Section 2, it says the best interest of the child, as my colleague from Denver talked about earlier on. And she's right, about how courts have to make difficult decisions. And courts have been making these decisions for decades and decades when it comes to child custody, child conflicts, all kinds of things. But that's not the average out there in society. Those are when problems arise, and that's what the courts are for. What we have in this bill in 1312 is a fundamental difference of beliefs and how we look at things. Our side is very heavily involved in parental rights. I believe, as many of my colleagues do, that bond, that trust between a parent and a child is one of the most important things to that child's well-being as they grow up, and their understanding of where they fit into the world. Because once an entity, whether it's the school, the government, another adult, another child, starts to sow division, starts to sow doubt in that child's mind, then you start creating problems. You start creating a scenario where the child doubts what their parents say. The child doubts the validity and the authority of their parents, and that can often lead to bad decisions, problems, and bad outcomes. It has been argued in this chamber on countless other bills that kids can't make decisions about guns, about other things, 21, 25, 18. That number fluctuates back and forth. And when it comes to these very philosophical issues on the Second Amendment, we'll have one side of the aisle that says, nope, you got to wait till you're 21 or 25, and you got to wait 3 days to buy this, and you got to wait for this. And it's wait. And yet we have in 1312, oh, let's change your name. Let's go to school, and if you want to do things, let's keep a secret from your parents. And you're asking a child to do that, or a teenager. So what do you think is going to happen when that child grows up? If they are taught that it's okay to keep secrets, do you think that's going to produce a healthy, productive adult? I would submit no. When society starts teaching that it's okay to lie, cheat, and steal, that leads to bad things. Look at the Roman Empire. Look back through history at any society that did that, and that is the path towards destruction. We should be standing for truth. We should be standing for parental rights. We should be ensuring that that bond between a parent and a child is sacred. We should be ensuring that they trust each other. We should not be pushing out legislation that says it's okay to keep secrets or encourages it. We should not be doing things behind parents' backs. As was pointed out by my colleague from Denver, when there are serious issues, yes, that's when the courts will be involved. That's the process, that's the system, that's how it works. But we are creating a process with this bill that is going to drive a wedge between parents and children in society writ large, because we're saying it's okay to lie. That is a big problem. Parents teach their kids to be honest. They teach their kids to stand up for truth. They teach their kids to talk to them. For me, in raising our children, my wife and I have always talked to the kids. Talk to us. We're your parents. We're not your best friends, but we're your parents. You can come to us with anything. We will sit down and we will figure out how to solve it together. You have to build that trust, and you have to maintain it. And it takes a lot of hard work, and there's stumbles along the way. Legislation like this isn't a stumble, it's a massive roadblock. That's wrong. The government should not be doing that. We should not be doing this in society. And I would be concerned that in decades in the future, they will look back and go, why would you start driving wedges between parents and children? Why would we start saying, keep secrets from your parents? Why would we say the government should start interfering? There's a process when things go bad, but we are saying let's do that up front. Growing up is not easy. Adolescence is not easy. And the more legislation like this that we put out there, we make it more difficult, not only for the child, but for the parent and for that relationship. And this is the wrong path. I definitely urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So Solzhenitsyn was a Soviet dissident, and he was very popular until he pointed out that the elite were the totalitarians. But one of the things that he pointed out that they didn't like was the idea that you should not live by lies. Because totalitarianism is a society, it's a system of government that is built on lies, based on lies, and requires lies. Bills like this are lies, full of lies, legislated lies. So, I don't know where I'm going to go with my notes on this, but I do want to note that there's a couple places in here where it says on the marriage certificate must not be marked as amended to indicate in any manner that the name on the license to marry has been changed. And perhaps that's where the confusion gets when the department may only amend a sex designation for an individual's driver's license 3 times upon the individual's request, no court order. Any further request from the individual or the additional sex designation requires submission of a court order. 3 times, then it needs a court order. Now, this bill does not speak to everything that's going to have to happen in terms of documentation when that happens those 3 times. Now, you can't change your sex. Again, it's chromosomally embedded in every single one of your cells. 3 times, any further requests. 3 times, any further requests. And then it talks about unnecessary government interference. Well, since your role as a government is to secure the rights of the citizens, I'm really kind of curious what you consider unnecessary government interference, because this is unnecessary government interference. And if you want to get out of this stuff, maybe instead of loving big government, maybe we should start looking at changing and getting out of the practice of documenting and controlling citizens, because as the Right Reverend Representative Dr. something noted last year about marriage licenses, it was just a matter of control. Because previously, the idea of marriage was just between you and the church. Yet the state stepped in for the purpose of control. Maybe the state needs to get out of the control process instead of more control, because everything seems to be necessary legislation because you don't know your role, and that is to secure the rights of the citizens who put you here. You're not here to govern. You are here to represent. Now, I'm concerned with a bill like this, very concerned with a bill like this for lots of reasons, but one of them is that it's spawned from an idea that this is the civil rights of our generation, and that seems to trigger a savior complex. You have a savior complex where you know better. And so you don't listen, and so everything here comes couched in the idea that this is about anti-trans. Everybody wants to say this is anti-trans. There's nothing, the parental groups didn't come here for anti-trans. They came here because you attacked the underlying self-evident, creator-endowed parental responsibilities that underlie the rights. That's what you attacked. And if you look at the laws of nature and nature's God, as I talked about earlier, you go mess with a nest. Go mess with a den. It is a parental right, it's a parental responsibility to protect the young. The young are not your playthings. The young are not for you to toy around with. The young are not for you to surgically manipulate and turn into pharmacological experiments. That's why 800 people signed up to testify. That's why 500 people were left hanging in the wind, because you didn't care about what they had to say, because you didn't care to have that conversation with them before.
Representative DeGraff, please don't accuse people of caring or not caring. Thank you.
500 citizens signed up to tell you their opinion. You chose not to hear it. The choice was made to not hear it. All 800 couldn't even listen to those parents for 3 minutes. And they were not talking anti-trans like you want to turn this into, because that allows you to hide behind some level of virtue preening that makes you feel morally superior. This was about undermining parental rights. That's what this bill is about. That's what this bill remains about. Plus all the complicated stuff of changing your identity 3 times, changing your sex marker, changing your chromosomes 3 times. I'm not sure how you do that, but you go in and you change your chromosomes 3 times. So this culminates on this continual sexualization of children. And stranger danger is very appropriate for this bill, because when we talked about children and secrets, yes, it's very appropriate. If you're going to talk about children, and when you would tell children and you would say, if somebody keeps secrets from you, what do you tell a child to say when an adult comes to them who is very interested in your sexual nature? That is what you would tell a kid. That's what they would say. They would say, stranger danger. And now all of a sudden we're going to legislate it and then say it's wrong for me to say here in the well. If it's not a problem, if you're not keeping secrets, if adults are not keeping secrets from adults who are intently interested in the child's sexuality, then we don't have a problem. But this bill is about keeping secrets of adults who are intently interested in the sexuality of children. That is a problem.
Representative DeGraff, please be sure not to stray from the bill. Focus on the content of the bill. Thank you.
Well, ma'am, this is about gender identity. Now, one thing you could look at here in this gender identity thing is you could just substitute individuality. Individuality would mean an individual's way of expressing the individual's identity to the outside world, typically demonstrated through the appearance, dress, behavior, or name. You could leave out all of the ideological stuff that is so important. You could take that all out, and how the individual chooses to be addressed, and you could stay out of the compelled speech, and you could stay out of requiring children to speak lies. But no, that is the important thing about bills like this. Now, one thing that I think about in this is something that we've had a lot of discussions about is the military. Because there's a problem with the military in general. We've got our facilities, and Colorado is becoming very unsafe for military facilities when the governor allows hostile nations to buy property all the way up until the fence line of an installation. And now we have a General Assembly that is creating an environment in Colorado where parents literally do not feel safe in Colorado. Now, I suppose if you're in line with this ideology, then maybe you feel safe, but parents that are not aligned with this ideology, they're looking at this and they're asking me, are my kids safe in Colorado? And I have to say, I do not know. Because there are adults that are asking children to keep secrets who are intently interested in their sexuality. And I think that's a problem, and parents around the country think that's a problem. Now, what happens? What happens when parents, when the military installations, and they say, yeah, I don't want to go to Colorado because as soon as I put my kid in pre-K, they start talking to them about maybe you're born in the wrong body. Maybe we need to get you, maybe, how about we let you loose in the library?
Representative DeGraff, you have 45 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Debiopath itself recognizes that 30% of the kids that go through the transition surgery become 19 times more suicidal. They've had about 7 times more mental health issues, crisis. Guess what the solution is? The solution isn't mutilating their genitals. Keep your hands off our kids. Keep your hands off their genitals.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 7 of the new bill, it reads, I'm going to fill in the blanks. Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, this is line 27, prohibits discrimination based on disability, race, creed, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, marital status, familial status, national origin, and ancestry. And it also ensures that every Coloradan is able to enjoy freedom from discrimination. Let me read that part again. Top of page 8. CADA, the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, ensures that every Coloradan is able to enjoy freedom from discrimination. It's a lofty goal, but is it possible? Is it possible to bring one group out of the closet without putting another group in? My district is largely constituted with Christians, people who believe in the Bible. Many of those individuals would identify themselves not by any of the other categories, but first and foremost by that one. If you ask them, who are you? Many would say, I'm a Christian. The goal here, as stated in this bill, is to ensure that every Coloradan is able to enjoy freedom from discrimination, and yet the terms of this bill discriminate. They discriminate against those people in my district who would characterize themselves as Christian. Under this bill, and what I talked about during the concurrences, there is a form of compelled speech for anyone engaged in providing housing, employment, public accommodation, advertising. Compelled speech. Calling someone the name they desire and the pronoun they desire. And I've heard asked, what does it cost you? What does it cost you to just call someone what they want to be called and have the pronouns they want to have? And therein lies the crux of the real issue. The dispute that Supreme Court justices and past U.S. Attorney Generals have noted is the conflict of our time as relates to this topic. Can you have these groups, both out of the closet, both fully expressing who they are in society, and still reach goals like this? Is it possible? During committee, it's my understanding that those folks who were opposed to this bill in its original form were called hate groups and compared to the KKK. In debate here on the floor, we were asked not to erase an entire population. Again, a good question. How do we make one group visible and not erase another group? How do you allow all parts to exist in society? If we as government are responsible for creating some sort of neutral ground that everyone can play in, what does that look like? Now, for those folks who define themselves by religion and define themselves by Christianity and define themselves by a plain reading of the Holy Scriptures, let's just walk through some of that. Genesis 1. The God who created all things created man and woman. He created them male and female. He set the standard. He said, this is the design that I am creating, and as God, I have the right to design it this way. And then in Psalms, he reminds us that I formed each one of you uniquely in your mother's womb in a fearful and wonderful way. And then in his commands, he repeats over and over, not just in the 10 Commandments, but throughout his word, that lying is not acceptable. Later on, in 1 Corinthians, which you will hear at almost any wedding, beyond the love does not envy, right, is not proud, does not boast, all of those things. Later on in the definition of love in that book, it says that love, by definition, takes pleasure in the flowering of truth. Of truth. To love is to speak truth. And at the end of that book, it puts forth a very dire warning. It says, but as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. What does it cost you? Well, for my constituents, again, the bulk of which are Christians, it could, based on these scriptures, cost them their eternal salvation to lie, to be compelled to call someone something that they are not. Now, you might not agree with any of this. You might say that's hogwash. You might say, I don't believe in a God, or I don't believe in that God, or I don't interpret the scriptures that way, etc., etc., etc. That's fair. All of you can choose what you do and do not believe. But if the goal, as stated in this bill, is to ensure that every Coloradan is able to enjoy freedom from discrimination, this bill doesn't get us to that. Because it discriminates against a core group in my district who believes that there is a God who loves in a way that no one can fully understand, whose essence is love. And out of that love desired to create man as a general category, but designed male and female, who uniquely crafted each one. And the idea that someone should lie is anathema to the command there, is a violation of the relationship with that God.
Representative Luck, you have a minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How do you balance? How do you allow one population to come out of the closet and not push another population in? How do you create a law that says that those people who genuinely believe that there is a God who has set this design, who has said this is what it looks like to love, that has said this is what it looks like to be fully alive, how do you allow for those people while at the same time creating space for those who would say, I was created in the wrong body? I am not actually aligned with the biological sex that I had at birth. How do you make space for both of those? Especially when you say your goal is to do just that. This bill doesn't do that. It also doesn't.
Your time has expired, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just will say it's not hate.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think there are a lot of things that could be said, but I hope actually that we have said almost everything that needs to be said in the language of this bill. And I want to reiterate how incredibly proud I am to be one of the people who gets to bring this incredible piece of legislation that is going to affect so many people, both in this room and out of this room, in a positive way here in Colorado. I think the need for this legislation was actually really unfortunately demonstrated by the treatment of some of the people who asked us to bring it in the first place and who have done such a beautiful, beautiful job of advocating and continuing to show up even when people came to their homes to intimidate them, went to their spouses' places of work to intimidate them, because they are part of this community and they're just asking to be seen and treated the same way everybody else is. What a horrible, hideous way to remind us all why this bill is so important. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to be standing here. You may be seated. It is an honor to be standing here with my co-prime on this bill and with incredible people and brave people in the gallery. I want to just address a couple things. I think first, this bill does not, in fact, encroach on parental rights. The only provisions in this bill are focused in the education setting. Number one, when a student chooses to go by a different name and a school district or a school or a charter school chooses to have a parental notification policy on the name the student chooses to use, it must encompass all reasons for the name change, not just names that students choose for gender-affirming reasons. Number two, when a school has uniforms, students should be allowed to use all variations of the uniform if it fits their gender expression. Neither of these policies remove the rights of parents. The continued mischaracterization of these policies needs to stop. It is a disservice to Coloradans who are really trying to understand what is in this bill, and we should be honest and truthful about what we are agreeing to or disagreeing with, without exaggeration. I want to thank those of you in this room who voted in favor of 1312 last month. You all listened to those directly impacted. You listened to trans leaders from across the state who shared specifically the protections that they were seeking. You listened to parents of trans kids who are seeking additional clarification in what judges could consider when deciding parenting time. You listened to our local legal experts who understand our state's discrimination and harassment laws and supporting the introduced version of 1312. Thank you for being brave and for understanding that protecting trans adults and kids should not be negotiable. I also want to thank our Senate sponsors who faced a hard battle on preserving rights for this community that is under attack by the Trump administration. Unfortunately, we were faced with fear-mongering and process fouls that forced us to strip the rights that were specifically requested by this community. At the same time, we were asked to add additional protections to this legislation, and I am grateful for that. These provisions were considered when we began working on this bill last summer and fall. At that time, we had determined that it was not feasible to include these provisions. However, when we were asked to consider this again, and in further conversation with the governor's office and the staff, we determined that these necessary protections could be added. When we began working on the Kelly Loving Act, we were committed to center the voices of the trans communities in crafting of this bill. We wanted to make sure lived experience was the basis of the protections laid out in this bill. From there, we engaged legal experts to ensure that the protections desired were legally feasible and implementable. Throughout this process, we made sure that we carefully braided the lived experience and legal expertise of our local experts. We were met with pushback multiple times by statewide LGBTQ groups who feared that this bill could result in lawsuits that would dismantle CADA and harm the trans community. And while we heard these concerns and made efforts to strengthen language in some areas, remove language in others, to be sure that what we were drafting fit within current state and federal law, what we refused to do was erase provisions of the bill that made some of those charged with protecting people in those national and state LGBT groups uncomfortable. We were committed to stakeholding and leaning on the experts of these issues from the start. What I find interesting is that providing feedback and perspective and considerations does not, in fact, guarantee that those suggestions for language changes will always be adopted, but that does not mean that a sponsor is unreasonable or ignoring feedback. It is the process of seeking this feedback from a broad group of stakeholders. When it comes to the existence of a group of people or the protections of this particular group, we should not be negotiating their rights for our own comfort. Dignity and respect is not finite. When we offer dignity and respect to someone, it does not reduce the amount of dignity and respect we deserve. Rights and legal protections are also not finite. Protecting the right of someone to walk through their day without facing harassment and discrimination does not take away from my or your ability to walk through the world without facing harassment and discrimination. Now, I want to be honest and transparent here. I was asked by a colleague on the right, do you even still like this bill? What I and my co-primes both here in the House and in the Senate committed to was following the lead of those who are directly impacted, the trans community and the parents of trans kids. And circling back with these incredible, resilient people, they said some protections are better than none, even if they're not what we asked for. So do I still like this bill? Yeah, I do. Because we are still addressing necessary protections that this community needs. Am I happy with how we got here? No. I'm not. I am disappointed in the way that some groups behaved. I am disappointed that rights were negotiated away because of other people's discomfort. I am disappointed that the LGBTQ community gave into fear instead of standing firmly with the trans community. But in all of this, I still stand here and ask that you all please vote yes on the Kelly Loving Act.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 16, I move the following motion on the repassage as amended, House Bill 1312. Shall the main question now be put?
For your information, an affirmative vote on this motion ends any further debate on the issue before the House. We will vote on this motion, and if the vote is yes by a majority of those elected, then we will immediately vote on the underlying issue before us, which is the passage of House Bill 1312 as amended by the Senate. The question before the House is, shall the main question be now put? Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Representative Byrd is excused. Please close the machine. With 37 aye, 27 no, and 1 excused, the motion is adopted. The question before us is the repassage of House Bill 1312 as amended. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 24 no, and 1 excused, House Bill 1312 as amended is repassed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Members, we are proceeding to business. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the remaining bills on the consideration of Senate amendments calendar until tomorrow, May 7th, 2025.
Seeing no objection, the remaining of the bills on the consideration of Senate amendments calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House now proceed out of order for consideration of special orders, second reading of bills.
Seeing no objection, we will now proceed out of order for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bills. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to House Rule 14, I move that debate on Senate Bill 322 be limited to 1 hour during special orders on May 6, 2025.
Members, the motion before us is, pursuant to House Rule 14, the debate on Senate Bill 322 be limited to 1 hour during special orders today, May 6, 2025. This is a non-debatable motion pursuant to House Rule 15E and does require a majority of all members elected to pass. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Please close the machine. With 34 aye, 31 no, and 0 excused, the motion is adopted. Members, debate will be limited on Senate Bill 322 to 1 hour. Representative Mabry. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Mabry will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. Members, pursuant to House Rule 14, debate on this bill will be limited to 1 hour. Amendments will be shown on the screens and on I legislate. There are no bills to lay over, but bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 322.
Senate Bill 322 by Senators Bridges and Baisley, also Representative Byrd, concerning the management of consumer protection claims by the Attorney General in relation to discovery requests during the litigation of claims brought by the Attorney General.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 322.
To the bill.
Members, this is actually a very simple bill which clarifies the Attorney General's responsibility regarding litigation on behalf of the state of Colorado or on behalf of the people of the state of Colorado. Section 1 of the bill clarifies the process around something that's commonly referred to as defensive discovery. Because the AG is a statewide elected official, he has independent authority from the governor or any agency to bring lawsuits. Consumer protection is probably the best example I can use to illustrate the importance of this bill. The AG is also required to represent state agencies in any actions against them or as part of an enforcement action. So what this bill does is clarify that in these two roles, when it comes to litigation, discovery can still continue to happen, but in an enforcement action, the Attorney General is only responsible for providing documents within the AG's custody. If for some reason there are documents held within the custody of another agency that might be incidental to the litigation, and perhaps there's a request for discovery from those agencies, then the litigants are
Representative
directed...
Byrd, hang on one second. Members, it is too loud. We cannot hear the conversation happening in the well. Please keep it down. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to summarize and conclude the thought here is that when, as I said, using the consumer protection enforcement work of the Attorney General, that's a really good example of a case where the AG is out there doing his business as an enforcement, taking enforcement action, and if an agency is tangentially involved in this, if one of the involved parties decides to make a discovery request, they need to use other procedures that involve obtaining discovery from third parties, and instead of demanding that the AG be responsible for producing those documents in discovery. So it's a very minor technical correction, but it needs to be made for efficiencies in the judicial process. We ask for a yes vote.
Starting further discussion. Representative Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I do not want to be down here having to run this amendment today, but cooler heads must prevail. I move L005 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That's a proper motion and that is properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, last year, for the best of reasons, we passed a first-in-the-nation bill to regulate AI. We did that with the intention of running a bill this year to clean up errors and issues in that bill that needed to be addressed this year. And we as the legislature failed to do that this year with real concerns. So what this amendment does is widen the title of the bill to the introduced title from the Senate, and then change the date to be 1 year later on those AI regulations. We have heard from school districts, higher education, businesses, even our congressional delegation, that we need more time to get this right. And we failed to do it this year. We are out of time. It is the day before. We need to have a delay so that we can get these regulations right, so that people don't lose their jobs, so that people who are working hard in our school districts aren't adversely impacted by these regulations because we didn't follow through on passing a bill. You know, this is difficult. I don't want to be back here later this summer having this discussion. A 1 year delay is the right thing to do. I think cooler heads need to prevail in this discussion so that we can work on these regulations and get them to a place where they'll protect consumers and still allow Colorado to be an innovative place. I urge an aye vote.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this amendment. This is unnecessary. And let me tell you, I was this author, one of the authors of Senate Bill 205. That's the bill we're talking about. Senate Bill 205 is the AI regulation bill. And we passed that around this same time last year. And they have had a lot of time already to figure out all the different things that they need to do to comply with this bill, which is now law. And the law goes into effect in February 2026. This is going to give them another year on top of the year that we already give them. Why? We had a task force. The task force went through and picked out all the things that we needed to change with this bill. We had to do all of these different things to get to a place where everybody could agree. And then another bill was introduced in the Senate, and then that bill succumbed to failure because they couldn't find an agreement. So 10 months of negotiating on a bill with a task force, with a report. You'd think that there'd be some kind of agreement that happens in that amount of time. I mean, we had the task force, everybody was on it. It was a huge task force. Everybody was on that task force. I was on that task force. I sat through all of those conversations. So yes, we had some heated conversations, but we had a report. We found out some things that needed to get done, and it was in the report, and that's what the bill in the Senate was supposed to address. But that wasn't good enough. What was in the task force was not good enough, and there was a request to have a small amount of time added to the implementation date into the session to give us more time into the next session, because it's a last-minute effort to try to come to some agreement during the interim with another bill. But that wasn't good enough, and they wanted a full year, another full year. And now, well, we need to make sure that everyone's prepared to be able to implement this bill. You still got until January of next year. You still have all that time. And if we do come back and we do get a bill stake held and we figure out all the details during the interim, we can figure out exactly the direction that needs to go. Because the bill that was proposed that didn't make it through, there was a lot of work that was done to take out certain parts, to exempt certain people, to make things a lot easier to comply with. That there's not going to be a complicated procedure to comply with everything. But that wasn't good enough, and they wanted another year. And that's why the other bill ended up getting PI'd. Because they were insisting on this deadline here that the Senate sponsor over there did not want to offer. And they spent a lot of time on that, a lot of time to try to get a compromise and a bill with actual bill language that we could actually debate the merits of here and actually pass and change the law that everyone's yelling and screaming about. But that wasn't good enough. So here we are trying to stuff this into this bill, which doesn't belong in here. And I'll tell you about this bill, Senate Bill 322. If you go back to the introduced version of that bill and read it, it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different topic. And I said, Don't you dare touch my right to repair. Because that's what they were trying to do, was make a process for the Attorney General to be able to address right to repair exemptions. And guess who wanted that? Big tech companies wanted that because they were going to lose profits instead of a real exemption, which actually is we put in place to make sure that those people don't have a harm with the products they have. For real reasons, we exempted a lot of things. Many of you were here for all the right to repair bills that I did. We exempted products because there was a legitimate reason to do that. And they want to give it to the Attorney General to do that, and only the Attorney General to do that. I strongly disagree with that, and I said that has to go, and you have to make the title really tight, because I don't want anybody trying to stick that back in that bill, this bill. And I worked very hard to make sure that we were protecting consumers and small businesses from huge tech companies and who want their profits, jeopardizing farmers and their farm equipment. I said, no, you're not going to do that. And I told them, if that bill comes over here with a title that's broader than this, with what this bill has now, I would sit here and I would talk and talk and talk and talk until the day is done. And guess what happened? We limited debate on this. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Well, I'm going to offer a substitute amendment. I move Amendment L008 and ask for it to be displayed.
That is properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this looks very similar to the other one you just saw, but it has a different date. This was the date that was originally proposed in the bill that didn't make it in the Senate. It changed it from February 1st to April 14th. That was what was agreed upon by many of the stakeholders in the conversations that the senator had on the other bill. That was what they all agreed to. But then this other group had to come along and say, no, 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 no. We don't accept that. We want more. We want more. And then we go back to what I just said before, when the bill was PI'd, because they wanted too much. And I don't get it, because Senate Bill 205, if they didn't like it as much as they don't, then why would you not want us to make it better? And even if you get 80% of what you want, which was what was agreed upon in the task force, then isn't that good enough? But it wasn't. It wasn't good enough. So we have this problem here now with this. So what this amendment does, by changing the date to April, we're not going to give them a ton of extra time to delay and to peddle all the different information about why the sky is falling, and Chicken Little can go running around and telling all the stories, but this still holds accountability and still has a date that's within our session next year to be able to come back and have 10 full months of drafting and stakeholding to come back here with another bill and still be able to hold some people's feet to the fire to say that there's a date certain that this will go into effect. Because if the date is a whole other year out, then how are you supposed to hold anybody accountable to that date? Obviously, we still had too much time on the calendar for this. Maybe if we had done May 2025, that we'd have a bill passed in the Senate to do the things that the task force wanted. But we gave too much time. We gave too much time all the way into February next year, and now here we are trying to get people to come back to the table in a good faith effort to negotiate. But why is this important? It's important because what's at risk is AI regulation and lack thereof, because there is no regulation of AI anywhere except for here, but it hasn't been put into effect yet. But if you look at the polling and you ask a lot of people, ask regular people out in the street what they think about AI and their opinion about it, and they will tell you that they are scared, that they're nervous about what AI is going to do. They're nervous about AI doing something bad, and they're seeing it. They're seeing it, they're reading about it in the news, and they're having all of these crazy thoughts in their head about what it's going to do, because I mean, look, we had another bill we were talking about, people having images made. I mean, AI is doing all kinds of things that are causing massive problems with people's mental health and their well-being. That people are losing their jobs because the AI algorithm is biased and they can't get the job because the way that it was trained. This is what the underlying law that we're trying to change here is supposed to do, and no other state does this. Colorado does this. We were the first and the only state to have a law like this. And it's for a good reason, because the people want this. And the people need us to have this regulation. And if we continue to kick this can down the road, if we continue to give them more and more and more time, they're going to try to repeal the law. They're going to try to do all sorts of things to get rid of this, because there's a lot of profits to be made. And this was a big conversation we had in the task force. And I said on the task force, and I said it many, many, many times, that we need to work with the companies together to find good, common sense guide rails for the technology. We have to be able to exist within some protections for people and still maintain ways for people to innovate and to make profits. Look, AI is going to make people a lot of money. It already has. It is going to make people billions of dollars, and there is a pile of money out there to be had, let me tell you. But when everybody's racing to the pile of money with their wheelbarrows, you got to make sure that people don't get run over and hurt in the process, because there'd be plenty of money in the pile for you to get later. But we need to work on protecting the citizens, the people who we represent. And we can do that. And people can still innovate, and they can still make a lot of money. And we can do that together if we work together. But we're facing the greed of all of this money that's going into this stuff. Then that's what's driving the delays, and it's driving all of these changes and demands. And that is the problem here. AI is a dangerous product, and we need to make sure we regulate it. It has to be done, and we cannot delay keeping this from going into effect sooner to make sure that they come back to the table to negotiate. We can do it together, but we have to work together. But they refuse to work together. They don't want to work together. They say they do, but they really don't, because they don't want to give up the money. And that's the problem. When there's a lot of money on the line, people do a lot of things. And that's what we're seeing here. is that they want to delay, delay, delay. But this timeline here in May to the amendment, this is a reasonable timeline because it's within our next session. And we have time. We have a lot of time. I mean, there's no time to make another task force, but the task force actually, I believe, still actually goes into next year anyway. So we can still have the task force meet and talk about this bill again if it helps. And maybe we should do that to make sure that we're getting all the information and that we're having the discussions in an open forum to make sure that the public knows what we're talking about. Because that's what's important. The public need to know what's going on. And I don't think they really have any clue what's going on because there was a lot happening today with bills getting PI'd and then this happening and then these amendments trying to be stuffed in here at the last minute. But the only real solution that actually works is this compromise delay. Not the year. The year is too much. This compromise holds accountability. And without that small delay, there's no reason for them to come to the table in a good faith negotiation. I mean, we've already seen that. Why would you want to come to the table and negotiate when you have lots of time to plot and do other things? I mean, that's what they're doing right now. A lot happened today alone. A lot of fear spread. How many people got calls from everyone? Yeah, well, that happened all right today. This bill has been going on since last year. But now all of a sudden everything's going off the rails because we had a bill that would have addressed most of the problems, but they had to push too hard. And now everybody's coming out of the woodwork saying that this is the end of the world. But it's not the end of the world. We have time. We have plenty of time, even with this amendment here. And if we introduce this bill as House Bill 261001, and we get that in committee and we can have the conversations for it, we can get it through by April 14th. If there's a will, there's a way, and I know we can do it. We've done a lot of big things here. And this is an important thing. We do need to adjust the current law, absolutely. But we don't need this kind of timeline to do it. And that's why I'm asking everyone to support this amendment, not the underlying amendment, but this amendment. This amendment gives us a sufficient amount of time. And it's appropriate. Because as I said, when the other bill was going through and there was negotiations going on, the 2-month extra time was what was agreed upon. And why should we go against what we've already agreed upon? The stakeholders agreed upon this. And now we're going to go back on that? Well, everyone was just going back on everything. I don't think that's really right. We should hold to where we stand on our agreements and not go back on it. But everything went off the rails. And that's a problem. But what's important about the AI bill, underlying what this is adjusting, is about consequential decisions. And you know what? I mean, look at the task force report. You'll see in the task force report that there were some things that we didn't get quite right. And we acknowledged those right away, and we adjusted a lot of that language. One of the examples is in the financial space. It was basically saying financial, everything financial. That's a huge group of everything. So that was one of the areas that we wanted to narrow down, and we had that. We had it in that other bill to narrow that down. And we would have done that. We would have narrowed it down. But what happened was that bill ended up going down in flames. So now we don't have anything. There was a problem with the hiring software and people saying that they would be a deployer of AI if they were using a hiring software. And we wanted to make sure we addressed that, to say that if you were using this kind of software, that you would not be considered a deployer if you had a certain number of employees in your company. And we gave people a lot of leeway to grow into that, to make sure that those industries could have good control over the bias in their software, to make sure that those hiring AI software actually did what it was supposed to do. We had that in there. So when it comes to actually trying to get the implementation and the companies to comply with this, they would have a much easier time if we actually had passed that bill. So we don't have that now because that bill went down. But you know what? We still have the task force report. We can address many of those concerns that everybody agreed on that were concerns that we could do. And I know we can do that. But we have to do that when we come back. We cannot do that in another year and delay again. We can't delay again. We have to do it now. We have to do it. People want protections against biased AI, and we can do that. But we have to come back next year and fix that bill. This amendment will keep the pressure on for good faith negotiation. And that's what we need. We need them to have some fire under their feet to come to the table. Because they won't do it. This is a tactic. I mean, you've seen this before. This is a tactic. Oh, well, we'll just delay. We'll just put this off for a while. And then, then who knows what happens at an amount of time. This is a huge amount of time. I mean, think about it. What they wanted to do was January 27. It's 2025. And I'm only asking for April 14th, 2026. But that's enough time for us to get some work done. And I think that's appropriate. And I think we should be up to the challenge. I think a lot of you should be up to the challenge. But the problem is that most of you don't even know what the underlying bill and what actually 205 last year actually did. And I know you don't know because none of you are even paying attention anyway. And I thought that would actually get more people's attention when I said that. But they didn't. They don't want to pay any attention to it. But it's a really important policy. It's a hugely important policy. I mean, ask people on the street what they think about AI, and they will tell you that they are very nervous about it. And think back just of our conversations we had just earlier today. AI is everywhere. It's not going anywhere. And if we don't put protections in place, we're going to let our citizens be prey to all of these new products that are going to come out, and they're going to do who knows what. I mean, I even heard an interview with the CEO of the car company, the electric car company, and he basically said with his AI that he would just rather let those cars drive by themselves and hit some people in the process of trying to train the car to do the right thing. And actually kill people to finally get the AI to be trained in the right way. These are the kinds of things that we're trying to protect people against. The recklessness. This is recklessness. And when it comes to AI, it's very easy to be reckless, especially when there's lots of money to be made. But we cannot let them succumb to recklessness at the expense of our citizens. And we can do it together, we can do it responsibly, and we can do it with sensible guidelines that actually gives the ability for companies to make a profit and to innovate. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can exist at the same time, but we need to work together. So maybe, I don't know, anybody here like the AI topic want to work with me on this bill next year? Anyone? Anyone? Don't. See, no one's paying attention. Hey, all right, I got one. I got a taker. This is a hard topic. I mean, look, I even said this on the other bill, that AI is a really tough topic, and here we are. We're talking about it again, and this is a tough topic. But that's why they send us here to do this work. I am the chair of the Joint Technology Committee. I have been looking at this stuff for a long time. I've been on the AI task force. I was on the facial recognition task force. I pay attention to this. I read articles about this. This is important. And you know, we can be very cavalier about what this does and what we do here and the consequences of this, but I take this very seriously because we have to protect the citizens. It is our job to be sure that we are not allowing all kinds of rogue products out there. I mean, look at all the things that we do to protect consumers in this place. And AI is totally open, and it's open source for everyone to be harmed by it. And that is a problem. We need to make sure that we're not allowing that to continue. So this amendment will get us there. I am confident. We don't need a whole year. We just need this extra 2 months. And I think we should all be up to the challenge to be able to do it. And I know that I'm willing to commit over the interim to have all those conversations with all the stakeholders again to really find out what our path forward is. I know there's a path forward. I know we can find that common ground. But we have to do it in a smart way, and we can't leave our citizens with that propensity for bias in these AI products. Because AI can be really dangerous. It can really affect people's lives. I mean, that's why we call them consequential decisions. And that's what 205 is about, consequential decisions. Consequential decisions can change your whole entire career. It can change whether you get insurance, whether you get a job, whether there's an AI making a legal decision for you and you don't even know that that's happening. These are the kinds of things that are happening. People have no idea how many things AI is actually working on every time they even go on a website or they do anything. Everyone's blissfully unaware of AI in their life. And we need to make sure that people are aware of it and that when that AI is involved in their life in a consequential decision, that they can have a way for relief from that. And that's why I'm here today to really talk about this amendment. It's so important. Because I was on that. Last year when we did the 205 negotiations, it was very, very tense. I mean, we had everyone coming to the table and no one was happy. And you know what? When nobody's happy, that's a good negotiation. We get everybody to the table and they give up a little bit. But in the case of this, the other bill that was on the other chamber that ended up dying, that bill made everybody not very happy. But the problem was they thought that it still wasn't good enough. And they wanted to make sure that they had more, that the tech companies got more. Because, you know, they don't want millions, they want billions. And that is a problem to do that. But, you know, we talked a little bit, I think, in the last couple sessions here about bias in tenant screening for renters. I mean, this has been a problem for a long time. I remember when a constituent first told me about this, he sent me this email and he said, I went to go get an apartment and they gave me a price. And then I said, well, I can't go look at this apartment right now. I'll have to come back. And he came back 4 days later and the price had changed. And then you say, what? How could the price go up $400 in 4 days? And then they said, well, that's what the algorithm says. That's what they told him. That was what the quote that he gave me that they said. The algorithm says that the price of rent is $400 more 4 days later. And that's all they would give you is the 3-day lock-in on a price for a rent. And then they would change it that much? I mean, this is what's happening. Rent should never be a commodity, but that's what's happening is that bias is going into setting the prices for that. So what we were talking about bias in screening for renters, digital denials. There's a whole article about it. It looks at the significant and often insurmountable barriers to decent, affordable housing that tenant screening creates for millions of renters. Tenant screening often involves reports or scores purchased from specialized tenant screening consumer reports agencies. And these agencies typically rely on automated tools, which may use artificial intelligence instead of human decision makers. And they claim that their tools help eliminate bias. However, the research indicates that these tools instead worsen discrimination in housing because errors and racial disparities exist in eviction filings, criminal records, and credit histories that are fed into the algorithms to generate the scores and as well as to train the models. That's just one example of tenant stuff. Then we talk about how people get rejected for claims in insurance. I mean, they were probably using this before we were even aware of it, and you were wondering why you got denied something that the insurance company wanted to do. That's a really bad thing when the computer says, sorry, you don't get health insurance, you don't get the coverage that you need. You're getting denied your care because of the AI algorithm. But this is what's happening. This is what we're trying to do here. People can still make a lot of money on this AI. They can make a boatload of money on all of this AI stuff, but we have to have protections for consumers. Here, this is the role of AI in union busting, how employers are using artificial intelligence to keep workers from unionizing. Unions and workers, beware. Employers have a new tool at their disposal in the union busting campaigns, artificial intelligence. I recall recently we just had a bill about giving unions a better chance. Well, I don't know, maybe AI, if we continue to let them run without any kind of regulation, we won't have to even worry about that anymore, will we? But it's essentially AI is putting a 21st century twist on classic union busting. And who likes these kinds of things? Amazon uses AI to identify union sympathizers. They're using chat bots after unionization victories to try to stop people from getting that second vote. And they're using AI to do that. And that's why we need regulations on AI. We have to. We have to regulate AI in an appropriate way. Otherwise, our citizens are going to be at risk. Here's a press release from the ACLU. Complaint filed against Intuit and HireVue over biased AI hiring technology that works worse for deaf and non-white applicants. This is what we're trying to solve here. This is what 205 does. And we're never going to get to a conclusion to fix the policy, and that's what they want to do. They want to kick the can down the road to get the policy eliminated altogether. And I'll tell you, that everything really changed when the new administration came in. Because when the old administration was here, there were actual standards written in NIST for AI security and standards on how to prevent bias. And then when the new administration came in, they went away like that. And then, you know what it actually said? It said that we should be competing, and we should take all the regulations away and be super competitive, because we have to be competitive with the rest of the world. And yeah, we should be competitive with the rest of the world, and we can. And we should do it in a responsible way at the same time, and we can do that. We can do both of those things if we actually have a policy that actually works. Mr. Chair, it's getting a little loud in here, don't you think?
Representative Dunn.
It's getting a little loud in here. I'm having a hard time hearing myself talk.
Members,
because no one
if we
else
could please
is listening.
keep it down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Taton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a thing here for complaints of discrimination for AI. All right, the complaint. This complaint alleges violations of CADA, which bars discrimination because of disability or race. And that's what 205 is supposed to do. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, if you care about preventing bias, then you should definitely be interested in maintaining Senate Bill 205, because that's what we really have, where these protections lie. That's what it's all about. It is specifically about bias. And in fact, what we were trying to do in the other Senate bill was actually simplify a lot of what people had said. Well, we're just enforcing the laws that actually already have bias, and we should just do that. And that's what the other law we were trying to pass before this happened. We were trying to get that in there to simplify it and refer back to the Civil Rights Act and the provisions in there that already have parts about bias. Because that's what it should be, right? We're referring to existing statute. We don't have to reinvent the wheel when we're getting AI regulated. And that's what's important, is that we actually have those protections in place. We should be simplifying it. Here's a paper from the Federal Trade Commission. January 3rd, 2025. This is pretty recent. People often talk about safety when discussing the risks of AI causing harm. AI safety means different things to different people, and those looking for a definition here will be disappointed. These discussions can sometimes focus on the possibility of existential risk stemming from all sorts of AI agent or cyborgs of the future. But that's not exactly what we're talking about here, is it? No, but speculation about human extinction as well as beyond the FTC's immediate concerns. But what the FTC here is talking about is the AI through the lens of consumer. I mean, I actually could, but thank you. The consumer protections is the mission of the FTC. Maybe not so anymore, but that's what it used to be. Consumers are encountering AI systems and tools whether they know it or not. And I think that's really the goal, right? People don't know that this stuff is affecting them. And we need to make sure that we are actually having real discussions about this. How much time is left? How much time is there left?
15 minutes remain.
Okay, 15 minutes. Well, all right. I don't want to hog all the time up. I mean, I definitely could. And I'm inclined to, because I don't like the underlying amendment, that my substitute amendment is actually going on. Because the year extension is excessive. I mean, it's extremely, it's as excessive as me talking here. It's unnecessary, but we don't need that. We don't need excessive stuff, only when we need it. But we don't need it in the case of this extension. That's why we only need the 2 months. And that's what we're asking for, is the 2 months, not the full year, but just the 2 months. So I ask for a yes vote on the substitute amendment, and only the substitute amendment, not the underlying amendment. So if we just pass this one, we don't need to worry about the underlying amendment. We just pass this one, we're done, we're good, and we'll have a nice night. So I ask for a yes vote on the substitute amendment. I think it's L007. Thank you.
Representative Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the underlying amendment actually widened the title, and the substitute amendment does not. So I request a title ruling.
Okay, the motion before us is a title ruling. The committee will stand in a brief recess. The committee will come to order. L8 does not fit under the title. To L5, any further discussion? Rep. Tatone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know what? I accidentally ran the wrong amendment. That would have better fit under the title, but I move Amendment L007 and ask for that to be displayed.
That is a proper motion. L7 has been moved as a substitute amendment to L5. Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So silly me. I'm so sorry, everyone. I talked all that time on the wrong amendment, where this one actually has the title change in it, and I grabbed the wrong one. But this one has the same title as the other one underneath it. So this one actually is more appropriate to the one underneath that. So this substitute amendment actually is the better one. And now I'll just tell you, and I'll explain to you why this one is so good. So, 2 months. 2 months is a good amount of time. How much do we get done here? What do we always say in the House? That the last 10 days is the best half of the whole session. That's what we say. So if we can get a lot done in 10 days, and that's like a half a session, 2 months is an enormous amount of time. And I have confidence that in 2 months, we could do a ton of work. And now, not just the 2 months, but we have a whole bunch of time from now up until then to get a great bill going. And you know what? We have a good place to start. I would refer back to the other bill that didn't make it through in the other chamber, because that bill actually follows the recommendations of the task force. The task force for that policy. We didn't create that task force for no reason. We created that task force to try to get to a resolution. And it's a real shame that we put all of that work in and all the time that we spent in those hearings for all of those months to create that report, and then we get nothing out of it. But never fear, everyone, we can do it. We can get to a better resolution if we give this extra 2 months, and then we can actually have a policy that can work out the kinks in the other policy. The underlying policy of Senate Bill 205 from last year does have kinks in it. Now, don't get me wrong. We have identified those. The task force report is very, very, very detailed, and you should check it out to understand what we know we need to fix. We don't deny that we have to fix things in the underlying law, and we intend to do that. But if people keep demanding unnecessary things that go well beyond the intent of what the task force was supposed to do, how are we supposed to have a good faith negotiation? I don't see how it's possible. So I ask for a yes vote on this amendment, which does fit under the title, because if this one doesn't fit under the title, the other one underneath it definitely doesn't. And if this one fails, I would say that we should title challenge the other one too. And I think that would be appropriate, because I don't think that has anything to do with the expanded title either. And I'm just throwing that out there, because we are playing games now with bills and expanding titles back. And I tell you, I wanted that title changed in the other chamber because I didn't want shenanigans. And look what happened. We still got shenanigans. And I don't like shenanigans. I prefer chilies, because the baby back ribs. All right, I will step aside for a minute.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank our good colleague for bringing up another idea. I want to assure you, though, that this isn't a compromise position. 2 months is not enough. We have heard from our schools, from hospitals, from small businesses, universities, just about every portion of our economy, every sector in our economy here in Colorado being very worried about having a new massive set of regulations that is not appropriately crafted, not ready for prime time, that much more work needs to be done to make sure that we are ready to go, and that businesses, schools, local governments can all afford to comply with these regulations. We need more time. 2 months is not adequate. This is why we have brought forward which is actually the compromise position, which is a request for a 1-year delay. And I would just point out that nothing stops bill sponsors, legislators, from working with stakeholders in the community to try to figure out a solution even more quickly. But at least we have the time to be responsible. We need time to craft responsible legislation, because what we ask for our schools, our universities, our hospitals, our businesses to do, it costs time and it costs money. Absolutely, we need to do our work to protect people, make them aware of AI. We all agree with the goals of the underlying legislation, but to actually execute on these goals and achieve the protections that we seek to achieve, we need time to get it right. Colorado should be a leader. We can be a leader, but we need to be a leader in the right way, which is to take the time and to get this right. So I ask you all to reject this amendment that is before you. It is not a compromise position. It is not something for you to consider as an adequate substitution. 2 months in addition is not the same as 12 months. And I'll reiterate that if we were able to craft and appropriately stakeholder a substitute solution or work through this more quickly than the year that our amendment would give stakeholders, then that remains an option. But again, at least we are working with reasonable timelines.
Representative Root now?
No, division.
Okay.
Division.
Members, a division has been requested. We normally let members speak after a division has been requested. Representative Tadon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, I want just to be clear that, yes, all of these people, came with concerns afterwards. That was after, like, the alarm bell was ringing and ringing and ringing that there was there's this big problem. But even in the negotiations for the other bill, they didn't say a peep. They only said a peep starting this morning after that other bill went bye-bye. That's when everybody started to come out of the woodwork. There's no coincidence about that. That nobody was ringing the alarm bells about all of these issues until all of this happened. And it was to gin up all of this panic. And that's all it is. Take a deep breath, everybody. There's no panic. We can adjust the bill with the 2 months. That's all we really need. We can do it. We've done these kinds of things before, and we can do it again. And I ask you for a yes vote and stand with me on this amendment.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our good representatives for bringing this forward. I was here a moment ago where a very similar amendment was not within the title, and as such have some concerns about this one and request a title ruling.
The committee will stand in a brief recess. The committee will come to order. The chair rules that L7 fits under the title. Is there any further discussion on L7? Seeing none, members, a division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L7. All those in favor, please stand and remain standing in one place or keep your hand raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. L7 fails. 2L5, Representative Byrd.
Division.
Representative to town.
Mr. Chair, I ask for the bill to be read at length.
That's a proper motion. The bill will be read at length.
A bill for an act. 101 concerning the management of consumer protection claims. 102 by the Attorney General in relation to Discovery 103 requests during the litigation of claims brought by the 104 Attorney General. Bill summary. Note, this summary applies to this bill as introduced and does not reflect any amendments that may be subsequently adopted. If this bill passes third reading in the House of Introduction, a bill summary that applies to the re-engrossed version of this bill will be available at http://lege.colorado.gov. The bill establishes an exemption from Colorado's Consumer Repair Bill of Rights Act for information technology equipment if the equipment meets certain criteria, such as weather. Senate amended third reading May 6, 2025. Senate amended second reading May 5, 2025. Senate sponsorship Bridges and Baisley. House sponsorship Byrd. Shading denotes House amendment. Double underlining denotes Senate amendment. Capital letters or bold and italic numbers indicate new material to be added to existing law. Dashes through the words or numbers indicate deletions from existing law. The equipment qualifies as critical
Representative
infrastructure
to town.
as defined by federal law.
Mr. Chair, I ask for the
The
bill
equipment
to
is
stop-
sold
be
in a retail
stopped
setting
being
or only
read.
through business to business or business
that's
to
proper
government.
motion. Please stop the robot voice. Okay, is there any further discussion on L5? Seeing none, members, a division has been requested. The question before us is the adoption of L5. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. All those in favor of L5, please stand and remain standing in one place or keep your hand raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. And members, while the count is being taken, just for our awareness, there's 1 minute remaining. You may be seated. L5 is lost. Representative to town. I just called the first hand I saw.
I move amendment L011. And ask for it to be displayed.
Oh, L005 passed. L005 passed. Representative to town.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L011 and ask for it to be displayed. All right, this is a tried and true one. Republican friends, pay attention. It's the petition clause. Let's vote for the petition clause. Let's have the people decide whether they want to delay the implementation of
Members,
AI
the time
regulation.
for the debate has expired. The question before us is the adoption of L11. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L11. All those in favor of L11, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand and remain standing in one place or keep your hand raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. L11 is adopted. Members, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 322. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The bill passes. Senate Bill 322 as amended is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Members, you've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
Members, we will be coming back to order. I need for everyone to take their seats. The House will come back to order. Mr. Schiebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs the report is under consideration. The following attached bills being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations. They're on Senate Bill 322 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Mabry. Members, you have heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 16, I move the following motion on the adoption of amendments to the report of the Committee of the Whole and the report of the Committee of the Whole. Shall the main question be now put?
For your information, an affirmative vote on this motion ends any further debate on the issue before the House. We will vote on this motion, and if the vote is yes by a majority of those elected, members, please. Then we will immediately vote on the underlying motions before us, which is the passage of the amendments to the report of the Committee of the Whole and the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. The question before the House is, shall the main question be now put? Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote.
Sure.
Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Velasco votes no. Please close the machine. With 30 aye, 34 no, and 1 excuse, the motion is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, Senate Bill 322.
Representative Zokai moved to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting Senate Bill 322 to show that Senate Bill 322 as amended 322 as amended lost.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the first Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask for it to be displayed.
It is properly
It is.
displayed. Please proceed.
Well, members, because I want to make sure everyone, there wasn't a lot of people really paying close attention. It is late, but this is an opportunity now to vote in favor of this, which is just like voting for the bill. But this votes the amendment that says that the bill didn't pass. So I would say this is a good amendment because what the change was made to the other bill that we're talking about is not a very good amendment. And I have a feeling that if it goes back over to the Senate, they might have some problems over there too. So let's just make sure that we can take care of this now and save ourselves a little bit of problems later. Just vote yes on the first Zokai amendment.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I would urge a no vote on this amendment. We would lose the changes that we have thus far approved to improve the Attorney General's process, and also we would lose the amendment that we have to give us more time to work on better working on our artificial intelligence laws. No vote, please.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of the first Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Velasco votes yes. Please close the machine. With 18 aye, 46 no, and 1 excused, the amendment is lost. Mr. Shebel, please read the second Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Representative Zokai moved to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the following Zokai amendment, L11 to Senate Bill 322, to show that said amendment lost and that Senate Bill 322 is amended passed.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the second Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask for it to be displayed.
It's properly displayed.
All right, and this is going to confuse some people because we passed this amendment, and now I'm asking for it not to be passed. And this is the petition clause. So I know everyone's going to be very confused about this, but to be honest, like, we really didn't need a petition clause on this because we want the amendment off and we want the safety clause on so the Attorney General can do what the bill actually does. So that's why I'm asking for a yes vote to remove the petition clause from the bill. And that way, we can get the provisions. I know, it's very confusing. It's very confusing. But we want to make sure that if this bill does pass, and then obviously it has the chance of passing because the other amendment failed so bad. So I know that this bill has a potential to pass. But if it does, we want the Attorney General to have the power to be able to do what he needs to do in that provision that we're giving them in that bill. I don't know. I don't have control over this bill passing or not, but I mean, maybe you do if you want to vote against the bill later. But I don't know if your mind's going to change at that point. But this is about the petition amendment, the petition clause, and taking it back out to go back to the safety clause. And I know that this hurts some people, and it's very personal because the petition clause is very near and dear to many people's hearts, and I get that. And I don't want to have to do this, but I just saw what happened on the other amendment. The bill is going to pass. Obviously, I mean that vote was pretty strong, but the petition clause can't stick on there if the bill's going to pass. So we're asking you to vote yes on this to say that the petition clause amendment lost. I know, it's very confusing sometimes. But yeah, that's what we're asking for. And this one is to have the petition clause taken out of the bill. And I hope you can support that. And I understand if you can't support that because you wanted this really bad. And I appreciated when you voted yes the first time. That did mean a lot to me, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. But I'm asking for this petition clause to be taken off at this time. Thank you.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No takesy backsies.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of the second Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote.
Madam Speaker, and I
Representative
vote no.
Representative Velasco, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Velasco votes no. Please close the machine. With 12 aye, 52 no, and 1 excuse, the amendment is lost. Mr. Shebo, please read the title. Please read the third Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Representative Zokai move to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the following Linstead Amendment L5 to Senate Bill 322 to show that said amendment lost, that Senate Bill 322 is amended passed.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate Rep. Zokai for getting these ready. I move the third Zokai amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask for it to be properly displayed. There it is. Okay, well, this is really the one that matters the most. This one is about changing the date to April 14th. Because currently, as the bill stands right now, it changes it for a whole year. And as I explained before, that is completely unnecessary. We don't need to give that much time. Because what we're talking about, what this amendment does, it changes what the amendment in the bill does, which changed the law that we put into place in Senate Bill 205, which had passed about a year ago already. So we've had a year, we had the task force, we had a report, there was a bill, there was negotiations, all of these things happened, and then we had a bill over in the Senate to try to implement these changes. And I just don't understand how, even with a law that nobody likes, how they can still negotiate that bill to be dead. It blows my mind, but it happened, and that's why we're here right now. We're here right now because they didn't adopt this compromise on the other bill. This was the compromise that was given by everyone involved to not have to go too far. If we go too far, we don't have a negotiating position. Our leverage goes away because there's so much time. I mean, think about it. 2027 is what the amendment was put on for. 2027, we'll be leaving our office and be sworn into something else maybe by that time. That's a long time away. But this amendment just gives us the time in the session. And that's what's the most important part, is within the session, we will have the ability to come back from, we can start negotiations tomorrow if we want. We'll have until then. I don't know, maybe we want to get a little sleep. I don't know, maybe. But then we'll have all that time up until April 14th, 2026 to have a bill on the governor's desk signed. And then maybe we extend the date again in that bill. But let's make ourselves have a negotiating position to be able to do it. Because if we don't pass this amendment, we won't be able to do that. And that's why this is so important. April 14th, it's a reasonable time because it's not at the exact end of the session, but it's far enough into the session that we can introduce the bill. I hope that the next bill that we do run is House Bill 1001 or Senate Bill 001. It should be the first one. This is an important topic. This is a super important topic that we have to address. There's no doubt that there should be urgency to do it. And that's why it was so disappointing that that bill didn't go through in the Senate. They had a great opportunity. And you know, if you have a sandwich that you don't like to eat, and then you don't put mustard on it, you have to eat a sandwich that tastes terrible. And I think that is really awful. And nobody should have to do that. Because, you know, I don't want to say the word about what kind of sandwich it is, but we all know what kind of sandwich it is. Some people view that as what Senate Bill 205 was. I don't think it was. I don't think it was that. I think there were a lot of good provisions in that bill that we put in law, and it had its flaws, but it was definitely not a sandwich that was very, very untasty. But we had the ability to make that sandwich with some mustard and pickles to make it a little bit easier to go down for everyone, at least so we can figure out a better way to adjust the taste of that sandwich. But we didn't do that. And because we didn't do that, that's why we're here right now with this. This amendment, if we adopt this, we'll go back on and we'll fix the problem, and then we don't have to hear any of this anymore. You can go on your life. Your ears will stop bleeding from hearing me. I don't even want to hear myself talk this much. It hurts me too. So let's adopt this amendment because this amendment is an important one. And then, well, my watch died. That's how long we've been here. Let's adopt this amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, and then we'll send it back over to the Senate to adopt this bill, and then we'll all be real good. So I ask for a yes vote to reverse the action taken because this did not pass. But I think it did. I don't know. You know, sometimes those division votes and the actual recorded votes are quite different. So we would like to be sure that we get that right. And this would fix that. And I appreciate giving me the opportunity to have this time to talk to you about this amendment. So please vote yes on the third Zokai amendment to adopt in the Committee of the Whole report, and we will be in really good shape for what's to come. I think this is the right move. We have to stand strong. We can't cave in. Thank you. Thank you. See, this is the right thing to do. We have
Representative
agreement.
Tatone, I need to interrupt you. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till tomorrow, May 7th, 2025.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House stand in adjournment until tomorrow, May 7th, 2025, at 9 a.m.
Seeing no objection, the House is adjourned until tomorrow, May 7th, 2025 at 9 a.m.